We have reserved the biggest face-off so far, and that is Foden versus Saka. Now, this season alone, it has to be only one player, that is Phil Foden. He has won so many games for Manchester City. Huge game incoming, and it could be a title decider between Manchester City and Arsenal. Last season, this was the title decider, and that's why I'm going to give you my combined 11 for Man City versus Arsenal as a very biased Manchester United fan. But actually, as a Manchester United fan, I don't have much to say. So let's crack straight into it. We've got the keepers. Currently, I'm going to base this on the best of the best that the teams have available, whether they're injured or not. And we are looking at Raya versus Ederson. For me, I have to go with Raya. I believe he's a better goalkeeper. I think Ederson is a fantastic goalkeeper. Do not get me wrong. However, I just think overall, as a goalkeeper, and I like my goalkeepers to be better shot stoppers, and Raya, for me, I've seen far better shot stopping from him than Ederson over the years. Next, we have to go Kyle Walker versus Ben White. Best of the best for both teams available. And for me, again, it's a difficult one because Ben White is not a right back, and Ben White can play fantastically as a right-sided centre-back or as a right back. He's been doing amazingly well for Arsenal. But for me, again, you have to go from what I've seen over the years. Kyle Walker is up there with the best right backs of all time, potentially, especially defensively. I think going forward, he does lack. And very shockingly, White can be a better attacking right back, even though he's traditionally a centre back. But with that said, I'm gonna go for Kyle Walker. And the next two positions, very tough. It gets much tougher because you've got Ruben Diaz versus Gabriel, and then either Nathan Ake or Gvardiol or Stones versus Saliba. I don't know who the best second centre-back is for Manchester City. There's also Kandji, who I've just remembered, is another one to consider. But in terms of the first centre-back, I think the best out of all of these as a centre-back, as a leader, for me, has to be the one and only. It's Ruben Diaz. Ruben Diaz, our number 3, as the City fans say. He's not my number 3, by the way. I wish he was, but he's not my number 3 as a Manchester United fan. So he takes it over Gabriel. And you know what? William Rolls-Royce Saliba, what a player. And I do think Ake and Gvardiol are extremely top quality centre-backs. I think Stonesy is probably the one I would put as the number 1 for City, partnering up with Ruben Diaz. But still, Saliba's just been doing a madness, so I'm going to have to squeeze him in. Left back, yes, I know he's injured. I know he's an ex-City player. He's the player that City loaned out to Arsenal last season to almost take the league away from them. Pep almost made a huge mistake by doing that. But obviously it was a very good financial deal for Manchester City. But with that said, I would definitely go Zinchenko versus Ake. I do think Ake is the best left back that City have. Yeah, I'll give it Zinchenko just on the basis that he's a proper left back, even though I think Ake is brilliant and he did amazing last season. He won the treble. I might even change my mind because he's so much better defensively than Zinchenko. But Zinchenko going forward, I don't like him personally. I'm going to be very honest. I really don't like him personally. But he's the left back, and Ake just really isn't a left back. But he's one of the best left backs in the league. So let me pick Zinchenko and I'll carry on. CDM. This is the position that everybody's going to be thinking is quite a controversial one. But I'll be very honest with you. I don't think this is controversial whatsoever. In fact, I think Rodri is by far the better centre defensive midfielder than Rice. I think Rice is learning the game, learning the tricks of the trade, learning to be a better footballer under Arteta, 100%. But at the start of the season, or at the end of last season, I wouldn't even be putting them in the conversation. They won't be in the same conversation. But based on this year, based on the improvement I've seen from Rice, I have to put him up there as the second best centre defensive midfielder in the Premier League. But as overall, as a midfielder, as a CDM, as a distributor of the ball, as someone who scores very important goals, and I know Rice scores important goals also, but Rodri is just the best in the world. He's got to play. And next is the second player who's got to play. It's Kevin De Bruyne. versus who we're going to put him against. Is it going to be Odegaard? Because if it is, I'm very sorry to all the Arsenal fans watching. I have to go with Kevin De Bruyne because you can't have this team without Kevin De Bruyne. I know Odegaard's been better this season. I will admit that. But every time, when it's crunch time, when it's clutch time, KDB makes himself fit and available and they go out and win the games they need to win the league. And I do believe this season, the same as any season, when they need KDB, he will land. And based on the game last year, where KDB decided the league almost on his own, I have to choose KDB. But I will caveat this. I actually believe that Odegaard is improving so much and he's been consistent, because my only criticism of people who said that Odegaard is the best, attacking midfielder or second best after KDB, better than Bruno. When you were saying that last season, it was based on one season. But now, second season running, he's getting better. He's still doing the same things, if not better. So the consistency makes him a very, very strong argument. But this is the best player of his generation in the Premier League, Kevin De Bruyne, alongside maybe Salah and a couple of others. So I cannot put anyone in ahead of KDB, unfortunately. Left centre midfielder, it's a tough one because you're going to have to go for Bernardo Silva or Phil Foden versus Havertz. So I don't think it's a tough one in terms of the Arsenal side. It's definitely a tough one in terms of the City side. Who do you choose? For me, I'm going to go with Phil Foden because I think that is actually the position I'd like to see him play long term. That almost cam position. But I know with him and Kevin De Bruyne, it might not work. The balance is offset, which is probably why Pep Guardiola plays Bernardo Silva and Kovacic and all of those other options much more, because they're more balanced than having Foden and KDB on the same team, both playing midfield. But, they win games like that all the time. So, do you know what? Let me change my mind again. Bernardo Silva gets into the team, obviously ahead of Havertz, and obviously ahead of any other midfielder that Arsenal have. And that brings us swiftly onto the right wing position, where we have reserved the biggest face-off so far, and that is Foden versus Saka. Now, this season alone, it has to be only one player, that is Phil Foden. He has won so many games for Manchester City, and I don't think Saka has done the same. Saka has still been one of the best wingers in the Premier League. Of course, he is one of the best wingers in the Premier League, and he's been playing like that this season. He's been consistent, but has he been to the levels he was last season? I'm not sure. And has he been at the level of Phil Foden? Definitely not. Phil Foden gets in over Saka. That gives us two more positions. One of them is obviously Haaland. I don't care who the striker is he's going up against, whether it's Trossard, whether it's Havertz, who we've already put in midfield anyway, or whether it's Gabriel Jesus. Haaland, of course, is the record holder for the most goals in a Premier League season on his first season. He's still carrying on. I know he's had many more injuries this season, but still, with that being said, we cannot even entertain any player versus Haaland. He's obviously going to get into this team. And last but by very means not least, you've got Trossard, who can play on the left wing. You've got Martinelli, who can play on the left wing for Arsenal, versus either Grealish or Doku. And you know what? None of them have had the best seasons. Doku's had a very good first season, but the numbers are just not as good as Martinelli of last season, for example. And Grealish hasn't had as good a season as he's had last season. Trossard has had good impact, but he's not been the most impactful. So for me, I do have to be very honest, and I'm going to have to pick the player who I think is the best on his day. And for me, that is Gabriel Martinelli. He's an absolute killer. And as you probably noticed, I love players who can score goals. I love goal scorers. That's why I've gone for Foden, Haaland and Martinelli as my front three. They're going to get goals. It's as simple as that. Doku can dribble. Grealish can dribble. Saka can dribble. But are they as good goal scorers as the main men who we are currently talking about? I don't think so. And that is my team from start to finish. Raya, Walker, Ruben Diaz, Saliba. Wow, he got in there. Zinchenko, Rodri, KDB, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Haaland and Martinelli. I think that's 3, maybe 4 Arsenal players that have got in. And you know what? That's very good bidding for Arsenal. Let's see how the game goes. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I mean, my opinion matters, but you as an urban baller, your opinion on the game matters also. So let's know in the comments below. And remember, if you are new, please subscribe and do not be a bell. Click that notification bell, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace! Peace, baby!